Welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. Today I have with me a wonderful romance novelist, Katy Regnery. She is the best-selling author in the Amazon's holiday fiction list. So please join me in welcoming Katy. Katy,
thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to have you here because I've had authors here before, but never a romance novelist.
Oh, well, I'm excited to be your first.
And we have a common friend,
yes,
right?
Carol.
Carol, and
yes.
she said, you must have Katy on your show because we are in a writing group. And she said, oh, Katy started just like this, in a writing group, attending some writing seminar.
I did.
And very quickly went on to writing bestsellers.
Well, one little one. I did. My children are now 6 and 9, but at the time they were 4 and 7, and my daughter was going to nursery school, and I was starting to feel like my nest was going to be a little emptier. And that was really making me a little sad. I wasn't sure what to do next after 8 years of being an at-home mom. And so I decided to take this course at the local continuing education in Ridgefield. It was a short story course. I was a maniac at first. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I had never really written anything before. But I stuck with it, and I really enjoyed it. And 9 months later, I wrote my first novel, By Proxy, which is it's a sweet romance, a small town contemporary romance based on this very obscure marriage law in Montana. And it just hit the Amazon bestseller list this past weekend. So,
see, on this show, I love to bring people that work in this area.
Sure.
And they're contributing to the richness of the culture or the life here.
Thank you.
And I thought this is just fantastic that you live right here, right? Where
Yes.
in
Ridgefield,
Connecticut.
Yes.
And you're raising your child there.
Yeah.
You have just the one?
No, my son is 9.
You have 2.
And my daughter is 6.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're living right here.
Yes.
And I'm wondering why I didn't hear about you sooner.
Oh my gosh, that's so flattering that you hear about me at all. Part of it is just that my first book came out 6 months ago. So I'm really still growing my audience. And because my books are all in ebook format, I grow most of that audience on Facebook and Twitter. Being online has really opened up this whole new world for me. Because my books are not sold locally in bookstores, I may not be as relevant as a local author.
But the print media is just dying anyway.
Well, yeah, a lot of people
you're
would say
good that
yeah.
you're starting out straight away with your electronic version.
You know what, and I love it so much. I love how quickly these books can get to the online retailers. I love it that anyone can afford these books. Also, you go to a bookstore, they can be $6 or $7. My books range from 99 cents to $4. I just think there's a really great accessibility to it, and it just seems like nowadays everybody has an iPhone or an iPad or a Nook or a Kindle or a laptop.
Yeah,
or
we have
or they can go to the library
on their very phones.
and log in. So it really has become prolific, the ability to read an ebook.
But then on the other hand, you also have thousands of people writing.
Yes.
And you have to really stand out.
Oh, wow.
With that.
I guess so. That's true. That's true. And, I work with a small publisher for one of my series, and my other series is an independent series that I do myself.
So what is your, I think I read one of your.
You did.
Your Montana.
You read this one,
stories.
Midsummer Sweetheart.
Midsummer Sweetheart is
yes.
the one I read. Yeah.
It was fabulous.
Yes. No, the thing was, I didn't know what to expect because I had heard that you had just started writing.
Yes.
And there are people who've been struggling for years trying to get their books published. Right. And a lot of people write and then they don't get any replies from publishers.
That's true.
They get very discouraged. But in your case, you just attended something, you were a stay-at-home mom, and then suddenly you go there, you just attend some short
story class.
course or whatever, get so inspired, and then you have your own talent and your own interest that came out in the form of books.
That's true. I have to say, though, that I really, from the get-go, I put an enormous amount of work into it. Even now, I work anywhere from, my usual day is anywhere from 12 to 16 hours when I have a writing day. A lot of that is spent on social media, on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
A lot is spent writing.
When I emailed you something at midnight,
yeah,
a little after midnight, and then 2 minutes later I'm getting a reply from
yes.
you. So I knew you were up to
I have
past midnight trying to get things done.
Yes, there are readers who will tweet me from Germany or Belgium saying, "How are you still up?" Because I'm starting my day at 6 o'clock in the morning here, and I'm still up. I think what that is that I really love being an at-home mom. I did love it when I did it. I love my children. I think anyone who does that job will agree with me. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world to be an at-home mother.
Yes.
It can be isolating, challenging. You just need so much forbearance and patience. And for me, when that sort of chapter of my life as a full-time at-home mother came to an end, it was like a dam breaking open of creativity. And
suddenly you have extra hours on
yes, I had extra time, and nobody needed me for, of course they come home at the end of the day, and I'm refreshed and excited to spend time with them and see them. But it was a really exciting time of self-discovery and creativity, and I just embraced it so wholeheartedly. I mean, yes, I started that writing class in January of 2012, and
So in what way was that class helpful for you?
I knew nothing about writing. My extent of writing was emails and thank you notes. Really, there was nothing else. I wasn't a dabbler on the side. I didn't write poetry. I didn't even keep journals anymore.
But you've written a few lines of poetry in your other book.
I do. I find that I like
Playing
it.
for Love.
Yes, Playing for Love at Deep Haven.
Deep Haven.
That's my indie book, and I did write some poetry in that book. I really enjoyed that. I guess I wanted so badly to do something that was about me as an adult woman, and not just me wearing the mommy hat anymore.
Okay.
And writing romance is, it is an adult profession.
I wanted to ask you, why did you choose romance as
gosh, I love
theme
romance.
for your novels?
I mean, I really, I'm a very hopeful person. I really believe that there's someone for everyone. I don't always think that you get who you think you want, but I think if you keep your heart open and your eyes open, I think there can be somebody in your life. And I love that hope and that promise that everyone can find love. I love writing about, my characters are very misfit people. They're not, I don't write about 20-year-old billionaires or actors, or I write about normal people who have normal problems and fears and baggage. And what I do is let's say I take a woman who has X, Y, and Z baggage, and I figure out what man would want that? What man would look at her and say, that is heaven? And so much of what I do is the fun of coming up with those two characters and then putting them together like puzzle pieces. And so romance was a natural for me. I love romance books, and I love writing the happily ever after.
In the writing class, did the teacher show you how to write a romance?
Yes, the teacher's name is Chris Belden. He's a fantastic local author as well. He lives in Ridgefield, very talented. He actually also edited Playing for Love at Deep Haven for me professionally. Fantastic person. He did exercises with us. I didn't know how to do dialogue tags or point of view. I didn't know how to set up a story. I didn't know anything. I was really sort of fumbling around with how to write a short story when I began. But his lessons were very good. He was great at giving us different lessons each week. One of them was poetry, in fact. And by the end of the 6 months that I spent with Chris in that class, I did feel like I had a handle on writing. Of course, I started writing some short stories and submitting them to magazines, and I was rejected so universally, and it was so painful that I turned my back on it by the end of that summer of 2012. I said, this is not for me. It's not working out. I'm not doing this. No more. But then I read 2 books, one by Lisa Kleypas, who's a wonderful romance author, one by E.L. James, the 50 Shades series, which I'm a big fan of. I know that's not popular to say you're a huge fan of it all the time, but I love it. And I just felt like, give it one more chance. And then I wrote my book.
Who's your audience?
My audience. It really ranges. I have young women in college who write to me from all over the world. I have some wonderful girls from the Dominican Republic and Argentina and France. And then I have older women who are, in their 60s and 70s and 80s. Just
what if the old, if you're past a certain age, like past 30, 35, say, and you say, are they going to be interested in reading a romance novel?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Those are the women I think who want
Really?
it the most. Yeah, because, think about it. You're 20 years old, you're in college, there's so many cute boys around. When you're like 50, I'm in my 40s, and it's, I think you want to remember what that felt like. And the wonderful thing about reading a book is that you can experience it without having to really endure the angst and horror of it at the time. Do you remember how awful it was to fall in love with someone, and how your heart twisted and broke all the time, and you hoped that they would notice you and see you and love you? And now you can just read it from a distance and enjoy it, sort of.
And I'm sure, these books always end well, right? Happily ever after.
Always happily ever after in my books. Always. It's a contract I have with my readers.
I know of late, a lot of writers have been writing nonfiction and doing a lot of research in order to write those and be counted as an important
like an
work.
Expert.
Yeah, like a good work. In your stories, did you have to do any research?
Oh yes, not like a nonfiction writer. And I don't aspire to that level of writing. I aspire to entertain. My books they're fun. They're they're a getaway from real life. I have huge admiration for nonfiction writers, but I don't envy them the amount of research and work that they have to do. I have a lot more fun, I think. Maybe they would disagree. In my books, though, I had never visited Montana before, and
I assume just from reading that maybe she's been there or she knows the place.
I have now. I went last October, but the first 4 books of my Heart of Montana series were written without my ever having been. So they were written using Google Maps and copious amounts of research and pictures and aerial shots. And when I did finally go visit Gardner, Montana in October after writing 4 books there, it was really fantastic because I could find my way around that town, never having been. I knew where everything was, just from the research that I'd done. So I went to a cocktail party after I released my first book, and one of the men at the party had read it, which is always so flattering. I love it when men read my books. But he had read it, and he engaged in a whole conversation with me about how he liked fly fishing on the Yellowstone River, and he's asking me what I thought of that, and what route would I take to go from the Bozeman airport, and I'm just talking to him, and he said, now tell me again how long you were there, and I've never been there. So it was great, but yes, there was
thanks to all the maps and the information online.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. I don't know how writers wrote books 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I guess they were at the library a lot using encyclopedias, but really impressive because now it's so easy to find anything.
Your books are easy to read.
Thank you.
And even initially, if you don't get hooked onto the story, you start getting hooked onto the characters and the story.
Good.
And I think you have some nice plots. And,
thank you.
In one story, you have a villain. Villain or whatever, the hero and the anti-hero.
I do. You have to mix up the formula a little bit. You're right that my books, in the reviews, and even I think this is conscious on my part, my stories are very character-driven. They're very much about getting into the heads of the people I'm writing about, for better or worse. Not everybody loves that style of writing because it really goes deep into people's psyche, but it is very character-driven, and it's about how these characters connect with each other and how they bounce off each other and relate to each other, and that's my favorite part of writing a book. But you do have to mix up the formula from time to time, and in my latest novel, See Jane Fall, I have a terrible villain. She is terrible, awful person, I mean, really, and she was so much fun to write. I mean, to write this awful, horrible woman who just keeps trying to hurt everyone around her. And it's a romance novel, so of course, in the end, it all works out. But
It's good to hear a great success story from you, because you only started writing recently. You said 3 years ago, was it?
oh, no. I started writing about 2 years ago.
2 years
January
ago.
of
Oh my
12.
God! So 3 years ago is when you started this. Not even 3 years.
3 years ago, I was at-home mom.
So you hadn't even taken the lessons.
No,
yet.
no.
Okay.
No, I wrote my first book in September and October of 2012, and there were 4 publishers who offered me contracts for it in March of 2013, and then I chose one of those 4 publishers. I chose Burroughs Publishing Group, and then they bought. I was writing so much at the time that by the time they bought that book, I had written the sequel.
So how did you know whom to approach?
That's interesting. I went online and I did a lot of research. A lot of this whole journey for me has been doing my own research. And I went online and I just basically kept searching for small boutique publishers for romance. I did go the traditional route initially. I looked for an agent who could sell my book to a New York publisher. I didn't have any luck with that, and to be frank with you, I felt a little bitter. So I decided to take things into my own hands. Now, there are 3 ways that you can be published without a New York publisher. The first is that you can do independent, indie publishing, or self-publishing. The second way is that you can go to one of the big publishers. For instance, Harlequin has an online imprint called Carina. Avon Publishing has an online imprint called Impulse. And these online imprints will accept manuscripts without representation by an agent.
Oh, I see.
So there is a way to get it. It's a backdoor to get into all of these bigger New York publishers. I thought about going that route, but really I knew nothing about the publishing industry. I knew nothing about how to find how to find a good editor if I went indie, and I didn't know a whole lot about the big publishers, and I didn't feel necessarily comfortable going that route. So I decided to go with a small boutique publisher. They only have about 60 writers in house, and I've been happy with them. There are pros and cons to any one of the 3 ways that you go, but my editor Jill is wonderful, and the editor-in-chief Chris is also terrific, and so I really lucked out with them as mentors for me, and I've learned a huge amount from them. I mean, just working with those 2 people has become this huge education.
I'm amazed because you started writing and you wrote very quickly.
I did. I do write
and
very
also
quickly.
you got to, you didn't just sit on it.
No.
You had it published right away.
I did, yes.
And
I
that's
did.
just amazing, I think.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because
yeah.
I have friends who've written novels, for years, for decades. They get
Just
discouraged when they're just sitting there, and if the major publishers reject them, they just sit down and get really
they give
upset
up.
And they just give up.
Right.
But I think you just didn't care, and you just found another outlet for your
You know what?
book.
My mother asked me at one point, why didn't you do this in your 20s? Why did you do this at 40? I'm 41 right now. And she said, why did it take you until 40? And I said, it took having children to be able to take the criticism.
Yeah.
I could not have taken the criticism when I first started sending out short stories. I think I kept most of them, but I think it was a good 40 to 50 rejection letters. I never sold one story. And then I wrote right before I wrote By Proxy, I wrote another novel, and I sent it to probably 15, maybe 20 agents. And it was universally rejected. So before I found my way, I mean, I was rejected a lot.
So you first learn to take rejection.
You do.
And then
every author needs to learn
and find out why they're rejected. Take it as a constructive criticism and improve yourself.
That is really important. It's very difficult to hear, you have a wonderful voice. I don't like your story. There's not enough conflict. That is enough to make some people say, I'm finished. It was, for me, it's a challenge. You want conflict? I'll give you some more conflict.
Yeah, I'll create some from the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So as far as writing itself, I mean, did you have to go through several edits? Or
everybody has a different style. I love the book that Stephen King wrote called On Writing. It's a wonderful nonfiction book on writing. It's probably, I believe it's the best. Somebody else would disagree with me. I think it's a great book. you know, he talks about how he does a first version and then a second draft, and how he puts it on ice. So he'll take the manuscript, he'll put it away for several months, then take it out again. You know, everybody has their own thing. Kurt Vonnegut, who's my all-time favorite author, he would type his manuscripts on a typewriter, and every page would be perfect. So when he was finished, he could hand the manuscript to someone. So he never wrote a draft.
So it's individual preference.
It really is. For me, I tend to write a large swath of scene, maybe 10,000 words. That would be, I don't know, maybe 40 pages. Then I'll go back and I'll start from the beginning and I'll edit all of those. So up to the 40 pages, it pretty much could be published. It might need some editing and some grammar and some tweaking, but it's pretty much done. Then I'll go another 10,000. So
and now you're also staying with the characters and story, and you have a chance to reread it and develop it further.
Right, exactly. So and then each time I finish another section, everything before it is finished. And that means that I put my manuscripts aside for about 2 weeks, and then I go back and edit, and then I can hand them in.
How long does it take from start to finish for one book?
It is, I don't think that I'm typical, I'll say that. The last book that I finished, Playing for Love at Deep Haven, I wrote that in 28 days.
Wow.
Yeah. But I don't think I'm typical. I've written 500,000 words this year.
I like the flow.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
You string together different little stories within the major story.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of
go
from one to the other flow.
Thank you.
I kind of liked it.
Thanks.
I was able to read it because I'm a picky reader. If I can't go past after the first 50 pages, if I don't like it, I just chuck the book.
That's it.
Then I don't want to read the rest of the book.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
I think most
sometimes
readers feel that way. I mean, really, do you want to put in the chops after 50 pages is an hour of your time.
Yes.
I mean, why would you want to put in more energy than that? If I can't get in by 30 to 50 pages, I'm even worse than you, I think. I mean, I'll be like, this isn't really...
I give people more rope and more allowance.
More rope to hang themselves with.
So it's just that you know, I know how hard it would be to write because I'm one of those aspiring writers, never sat down to write really in a short story here and there, just for myself or my family.
Right.
But then I said, but I like to read.
Right.
And I've read a lot of romance novels in my day. You
were telling me that you read the
80s.
Mills and Boon.
The Mills and Boon stories, and a host of other writers. I was telling you before the show that I can still remember books like Desiree and Rebecca. And those stories are just, they tend to stay in your head.
Are you talking about Rebecca the Daphne du Maurier
Yes,
story?
Daphne du Maurier,
gosh,
yes.
that is a great one. Do you like the film version of that?
I don't
Joan
know.
Fontaine?
See, in the film, something is lost. Something is lost.
Something's lost, like her terrible acting. It's terrible. It's terrible. Laurence Olivier is so wasted in that.
You have to read the book.
Awful. I agree.
So I myself used to be a voracious reader at one point, but then when you're a stay-at-home mom, like you said, you know, you don't have the time.
Or
people would think you have all day, but still you don't get to really sit and read.
You have 5 minutes at a time, and then
they
need their sippy cup or their diaper, or they need a nap, or they need to fight with you about something. I mean, it's never ending. And I mean,
that's a full-time job,
it is,
really.
And it's so rewarding. I would never, ever give up the 8 years that I was at home raising my own children. I know them like the back of my hand. I know those children, and I love them, and they know me, and we're an incredibly tight unit, the three of us, and my husband too, the four of us. You know, that said though, when it was time for school to start, it was also time for me to take on a new chapter of my life. I mean, they go to elementary school. What am I going to do? You know?
Yeah, I have a little small question because we only have a few minutes left. You know, I was given to understand that you have to write about what you know.
I disagree with that. I totally disagree with that. That is something that somebody said once, and it became very popular. I think you do have to, in some part, infuse yourself into a story. But I had never been to Montana. I had never experienced a double proxy marriage. I'd never fallen in love with a guy from Chicago. I'd never been a school teacher. And yet that book right now is the #1 holiday fiction bestseller on Amazon. I didn't write about what I knew. Now, I did write about values and kindness and finding your way and making mistakes and knowing how to say you're sorry and knowing how to tell someone that you love them. But I mean, that's what I know. The rest of it was fiction.
I think in your case, you know how to tell a story.
I
right?
hope so.
So that's what you know, and so you're right.
Yes.
Giving us a story.
Yeah,
here.
I like that.
So,
I like that.
Because everything else can be researched, as you mentioned.
I think so.
Right?
That's what I think. So.
We do have 2 minutes.
Oh, we have 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Any other questions? Or can I mention my website?
Yeah, sure.
That I have a website at www.katyregnery.com. And all of my books are listed there if you're interested in checking them out. Usha said they were good. She read 2.
Yeah, I look forward to reading more of these because I had stopped reading romance novels.
Have I jump-started you?
Yes, you have.
Yes!
Yeah. And now I think if I go to the beach or something, I'm going to carry
You'll take a Katy Regnery book. I love it.
But it's nice because it talks about life here in the U.S. and today, and I think it's very relevant. And I'm sure it's relevant for anyone else who is reading it too. But for those of us here, it makes more sense.
Oh, good.
And also in your book, you've written about, we do learn some different things, like Scandinavian people.
Yes.
Some of their language.
That's a big part of my book.
And in this, about the music business and this other story.
Yes.
And, the tattooed guy.
Yes. I try to
to
really create a full world that you can immerse yourself in for a while, whether that's like this close-knit Scandinavian family in Montana or this rocker and this novelist who find each other after 10 years apart. Like, I want you to feel like you know them and like you're comfortable living in their world and staying in their world for a while.
We only have 30 seconds. So I would invite you back again to do another
thank
show,
you.
and we'll talk more about how you actually write and where you get your topics and characters from.
I'll look forward to it. Thank you
very much, Katy.
Thank you, Usha.
For all of you watching the show, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have questions, you can write to practicaltalktime@yahoo.com. Until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.